cutting edge guests, awesome, uncensored, jaw-dropping information, plus funny memes, good deeds, and loads of laughter. Kind of have it all. Ladies and gentlemen, if your soul's awake, then welcome, because you're in the right place. Well, good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, and welcome back to the Sovereign Soul program, a show which stands for love, levity, and liberty, because after all, love is the greatest power everywhere, and laughter's the best medicine, especially covering serious topics and all matters ancient, current, and quantum, right? It's a mantra, our mascot, the Bling Buddha. He fully subscribes to it as he fires red pills from his 9mm, smiling, he's wearing his necklace blinged out with precious metals and a digital asset token hanging from it. I am your host, Brad Wozni. I'm grateful to you divine lions and lionesses for tuning in around the world, coming back to the show. I'm fortunate to become a Reiki master in 2015, former Canadian military soldier and entrepreneur, and my soul's purpose now in songwriting, screenwriting, and with this show is to help uplift humanity's consciousness with song and story. With that stated, we have an incredible show here for you today. Literally one of the heroes for humanity leading the charge with me, Jack Maxey, is whom you see on the screen. And this divine gentleman is a former US Navy officer. He's a Yale grad. He spent a decade or more in investment banking. He has been the co-host of War Room since the pandemic with Steve Bannon, and has dedicated his life and fortune to exposing the mass corruption of the Biden crime family. He is literally the gentleman, the patriot who handed over the Hunter Biden laptop to the FBI after it was refused by the laptop repair business owner. He is here to share with you some of the items on that laptop. And in addition to that, what is most important is to wake up the world with the mass corruption and the wool that's been pulled over many people's eyes, not just in America or in Canada, but around the world. Jack joins us for the next 30, 40 minutes. Jack, thank you very much for taking your time today and doing so.
Thank you very much. A small correction. I did not hand it to the FBI. That Mac Isaacs did.
Thank you.
But they got it on the 9th of December. He'd spent 4 or 5 months trying to get them to pick it up. And I think the really key thing, it's not a bad way to start the show because everybody should think about it. That was the 9th of December of 2019. That means that Peter Strzok and the counterintelligence group, which now it's obvious is the one that had it, even though I've been saying that for a year, because even now Ray has revealed this in his testimony. The Baltimore office is the CI group. And they got it on the 9th of December, 2019. That means they sat on exculpatory evidence through the impeachment of a sitting U.S. president. Doesn't matter what your party affiliation is, that's a betrayal of everyone.
Yeah.
And then they sat on it through the entire Democratic primaries, betraying every single supporter and voter of Tulsi Gabbard, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, and Bernie Sanders. All of them were robbed by the FBI with intent to undermine our democratic process.
Jeez, it's almost like, where do you go from here? 3 years and counting. It's been sitting in there, and you had an interesting. I've watched you on 3 different shows now, most recently with Michael Jaco, and you had mentioned that the laptop business owner, thank you for the point of clarification too, he had attempted to hand it to the FBI and they didn't want it. And he had to actually contact some of his family members who are in the military and ask them about what to do. Would you mind just taking us through that chronologically and where we are today?
So Isaacs gets the computer roughly first week of April of 2019. Hunter drops it off to be repaired. It's completely scrambled. It's going to take a week to 10 days to fix it. And, you know, I have all the receipts. Hunter did drop it off. There's no question about that. Now, he never came to pick it up. And everyone says, well, why didn't he come to pick it up? I said, the guy's doing 5 grams of cocaine every day. He's drinking a quart at minimum of vodka every day. He's in a completely deranged, paranoid state. His Chinese partners have been murdered, disapparasitoed. He's afraid his family's going to expose him for sexually abusing his niece. He's literally in a spiral. So to me, it does make sense that he could have done this by accident or not have remembered where he left it. Now, Isaacs apparently sent registered mail, emails, telephone calls. Guy never picked it up. And ultimately, later in August of that year, after the Zelensky phone call, the same clown who we're following into the abyss in Ukraine right now, has the phone call with Trump, who Lieutenant Colonel Vindman determines is, improper phone call, and single-handedly with the mainstream media and the depraved left, institutes an impeachment proceeding against the president for a 1-minute phone call. And during that period of time, Isaacs is freaking out. He says, look, I don't want this information in my computer store. And through his fathers and his uncle, he contacts the FBI. And that's how the ball starts rolling. But again, this is, I believe, in late August, and they never come to pick it up till December. And when Isaacs tells the FBI agent that he is in fear for his life to have this in his possession, the FBI agent makes a veiled threat and tells Isaacs that, in his experience, people keep their effing mouths shut, have nothing to worry about. Now, thank God Isaacs had made a couple extra copies, one of which I received.
Wow. I watched Representative Matt Gaetz' testimony just 2 months ago. I might be off on that, but it was definitely within the last 2 to 3 months, where he actually had one of the assistant deputy directors of the FBI, Jack. And under that sworn oath and open testimony that was aired on C-SPAN, was questioning him, the FBI, as to why they didn't do anything with the evidence that was at hand. And then Representative Matt Gaetz entered that evidence himself. Extremely powerful.
That's true. And I'm glad he did it. I mean, I think in part he had to do that because Matt had it for a year too. So at some point, these people have to stand up and be counted. I mean, remember, I delivered a copy to the Senate Judiciary Committee, the minority on the Senate Judiciary. This would be Grassley, Graham, Kennedy, Lee, Sass, Tillis, Blackburn, all these people that we consider to be leaders of our movement. And they did nothing. I mean, imagine what a different world it would be if they just walked out on July 9th of last year in 2021 and said, hey, we've got a copy of Hunter Biden's laptop. We're looking into it. I personally think there'd be 13 Americans who would still be alive, who wouldn't have died in Afghanistan.
Right.
I don't think we would have this massive immigration issue going on.
Right.
I don't think that we would have pressed the boundaries of NATO to the Russian frontier and given us this global disaster called the Ukraine invasion, which is going to collapse the economy of Western Europe and is certainly having a big effect on ours and economies around the world. All this could have been avoided if the Republicans had shown some courage, and I'm very sad to say that I've not seen any.
So do you feel, in your sense, and everybody that you're connected with, Jack, that the majority of the corruption, it's cross-party, and it's either because they are for fear of their lives and or they have been captured and being blackmailed, like we've heard so much, especially that's come out over the last 2 years? What are your feelings, thoughts, or information?
Well, I'd say it's pure greed. All Americans have to do is look around their country and look at the shuttered factories, the broken main streets, and watch places like Walmart continue to, grow. Watch Chinese industry continue to grow because we sent our father's jobs over to China so we could get it done more inexpensively, so Wall Street could profit at the expense of the American people. And a great illustration of this should have been apparent to everyone after COVID-19, the lack of production of basic drugs and personal protection equipment that we saw during the COVID crisis should be a clear wake-up call that we need to bring this stuff home. 80% of all of the drugs consumed by Americans, Canadians, you name it, comes from China. And to illustrate again how bad it is, you remember a few months ago, we pulled the 26 inspectors for avocados from Mexico because of threats from the cartel. Do you know how many FDA inspectors we have for the entire global drug supply in China? 4.
Wow.
So
Wow.
the American people are utterly being taken advantage of, and we were sold out. We were sold out by Wall Street, by the drug manufacturing companies, the manufacturing companies. I mean, they're talking about sending us electric cars, but we don't make any battery components in the United States. We don't mine lithium. It's too dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, it's too dangerous for Canadian Americans to be exposed to lithium dust, but not Chinese slaves.
Mhm.
And yet we drive around in these electric cars, genuflecting our moral superiority when literally there are 500,000 African children picking cobalt, a poisonous heavy metal, out of the dirt in the Congo to make these batteries.
Yep. Yeah. My audience knows, and I shared with you just offline prior to recording, that, you know, children and saving the children in any way possible, from a trafficking standpoint, from a health standpoint, what they've been shooting people up with, especially these last 2.5 years, and some stuff I've shared with Dr. Northrup on this program earlier. That's exactly the core for me. That's where we've heard Jesus has righteous indignation. There are times in the Bible, the real Bible, and also the one that we're aware of now, where he has had that righteous indignation that has kind of flown off the handle. And that's really key to me. And now what you have helped shepherd into the light, and literally here the sunlight's coming in, talk about wonderful symbology, Jack, is information that has literally, from everything I've read, and I'm not an attorney, but everything I've read and I've seen, this is pretty much unfettered. There is no way you can make a discussion against the fact that this gentleman, and I use that term very loosely, that Hunter is not only a pedophile, but also a corrupt criminal at the highest levels of the land, and has massive amounts of treasonous activities on it, just from what's been disclosed that I've seen through open domain sources and independent news streams, and with some of the contacts that I'm affiliated with, as well as the folks on the Truth Tour I'm speaking on over the course of these next 2 months. What is it, in addition to that, or the information you'd like to compound on that, Jack, to bring to light where people may not be so much aware yet of the contents on the laptop that go directly to him, Hunter, that go up to the rest of his family members who have pulled the wool over the world's eyes, in my opinion, and then also what people need to really realize right now and what they could do?
I think that the key thing that people have to understand is that we've completely lost oversight over Western intelligence. 100%. They're so secret that the British Parliament doesn't know what they're doing. The United States Senate doesn't know what they're doing. The Canadian Parliament doesn't know what they're doing. You're even seeing this right now in the questionable case of this British woman who was apparently carried into Syria by Canadian intelligence, and everybody's buttoning up. Well, it was a national security. Well, if it's so secure that our elected leaders don't know about it, then it's a danger to us. It's not, it doesn't have anything to do with national intelligence anymore. It has to do with the probable danger that all of us are exposed to things by a cabal of small groups of individuals making decisions for the future of this country and the future of the West and the world. I think, for example, there's a wonderful example. Hunter gets hired by Burisma in spring of 2014. He's going to get paid $82,000 a month. Before they even get their first paycheck, the first purpose for the Burisma executives is to get visas so they can travel. Hunter's partner is a guy named Devin Archer. Devin Archer was Chris Heinz's roommate at Yale, and John Kerry's kind of body double when he ran for president. Very close family of the Heinz Kerry cabal.
Mm-hmm.
The third partner, another partner, is a guy named James Whitey Bulger. Yes, it's Whitey's nephew. He's the third partner of Hunter and Devin and Whitey. They're all engaged in the Chinese private equity fund. But the very first trip that they take with Burisma is to Kazakhstan in June of 2014. And when I knew that Grassley and these clowns were looking at the laptop was in January of this year, they made a public statement that, oh, we have email evidence showing that Hunter traveled to Kazakhstan without the Secret Service. Now, what they neglect to say, and I revealed this before the election, was that the purpose of that trip was to meet with Prime Minister Massimov. Prime Minister Massimov is now chained up in a concrete box in Kazakhstan because they're blaming that failed coup in January on him.
Right.
And they was going to circle up the best oil and gas leases inside Kazakhstan for sale to CNOOC, Chinese National Offshore Oil Company. This is not a quasi-private company listed on the Shanghai Exchange. This is one of the first corporate entities created by the Communist Party in 1949, wholly owned by the Communist Party of China. And Hunter, the vice president's son, is in Kazakhstan brokering the sale of their mineral assets. This was similar a few years later. This is the Bobulinski story. In 2017, they were over in Oman attempting to purchase a third of the royal family of Oman's gas and oil assets for sale to another Chinese company called CEFC. And that's where Bobulinski was all about. He was involved in that. Another guy named James Gillar, Gillar, former British SAS, brags regularly about his tight communications and contacts in MI6, implying that he is also an MI6 operative. So this pretense that nobody knew what was going on is absolute BS. I'd still like to know if Lieutenant Bobulinski went to the authorities in 2017 when he should have gone, or if he just showed up on Tucker Carlson in the fall of 2020 when he knew he'd be exposed. That to me is a vitally important question. But it's not, this is in your face. They're not trying to hide this stuff. The other thing about the whole Burisma connection, there's a guy named Cofer Black. Cofer Black was a CIA operative. He was a case officer. He'd worked in places like Khartoum. He was apparently in Saudi Arabia with John Brennan, very tight to the leadership. And in 2016, he also gets a seat on the board of Burisma. His name and signature are all over corporate documents signed by Hunter and Devin and all the rest of these crooked actors. And are you trying to tell me that he wasn't in communication with his old agency describing what was going on? Or maybe he's just gone completely rogue and is the poster boy for bad actors in the intelligence community who seem to operate with impunity because nobody wants to put him on a stand. But I can't believe it for even a second that people didn't know what was going on. And then everybody forgets about that coup in Kazakhstan, but who provided the foreign fighters from Kurdistan and from Syria? I mean, who provided the logistics to make that happen? And who would have benefited by having Massimov be put back in power? I think it has to be the United States government or the Chinese. But when you toss in the logistics, I'm assuming that it was CIA who brought in those foreign fighters. Somebody needs to put Cofer Black on a stand, that's for sure. And then when you look back to October of 2020, when we were first trying to get the media to do something about this, and we ultimately got two relatively benign articles published in the New York Post on the 17th and 18th of October 2020, that today would be nothing burger stories, but Rudy was very intent upon proving the Ukraine connection at the time. But the following morning, on the 19th of October, using Politico, yes, a lovely voice piece for US Intel. It'll appear in Politico one day and the Washington Post 4 hours later. That's the methodology. You have 51 retired intel officers of stature, including 6 who are so secret they can't even give their names. They're just extra secret. But the top line names are John Brennan former director of CIA, bad guy. You have Michael Hayden, former director of CIA and NSA, bad guy. You have Leon Panetta, former director of CIA, and you have Clapper, former director of national intelligence. And they write this weaselly word 5-page document describing this as, in their best estimation, a fabrication of Russian intelligence. We get a global blackout on this story 2.5 weeks before the election. That's your election interference. I think this whole thing with Dominion and Symantec was, in many ways, an attempt by U.S. intelligence to divert us from the truth, which is U.S. intelligence stole the 2020 election and had intent from an early point to make sure that Donald Trump was not reelected, but more importantly, to make sure that Gabbard and Bernie and Elizabeth and Amy were not elected either, right? They needed somebody who was read in on the omerta of their decades of criminal activity. That person would be Joe Biden. And by way of pointing this out and by way of showing how I proved over a year ago that it was the counterintelligence group that was involved in this at the FBI, in 2016, Hunter has a corrupted partner in Bucharest named Popescu. Popescu would be the Tony Soprano, say, of Bucharest. And he's important to Hunter because this corrupt actor is helping to grease the skids for the sale of the Ploiești oil fields, relatively minor oil fields in Romania, but historically important in that it was the place that was the last oil for the Nazi regime in World War II. Many of our grandfathers flew over those fields. So here we are 75 years later, that blood-soaked soil is being brokered for sale to the Chinese. In fact, they were even contemplating purchasing the Greek railroads out of bankruptcy so that they could play Warren Buffett and ship this oil down to ports. And all this was going on in 2016. It's an important deal for Hunter, and Hunter hires Uncle Louis Freeh, who is a great patron of the family, sits on the Beau Biden Foundation, a foundation institute for the protection of children. Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah, what a joke.
Gives the Biden grandchildren $100,000 gifts for their trusts. Real pal of the family, and multiple emails where he tells Hunter, you, me, and your dad can make tens of millions of dollars. But Louis Freeh flies to Bucharest on 3 occasions. His partners at the time are a guy named Judge Sullivan, retired federal judge. Louis is a retired federal judge, FBI agent. 3 prosecutors from the Southern District of New York. We know what they're all about. 1 from the Middle District of Florida, Epstein's district. An American who used to run Interpol, and a joker from NSA who can fix any computer problem. This is the Louis Freeh fix your dirty problems, crooked, illegal law firm. Yes, and I've been saying that for a year and a half. So if Judge Sullivan and Judge Freeh are not suing me for defamation, there has to be a reason. So Hunter reaches out to Freeh, and Freeh offers through a surrogate to corrupt the FBI assets of Eastern Europe. We're going to get to this woman. We'll dogpile this female prosecutor, just like the Justice Department does to regular Americans every day, right? We have more money than you. And, you know, we don't have to pay the lawyers. In fact, you have to pay your lawyers and our lawyers. And ultimately, they fail. But we know from contacts in Romania, all of whom were terrified to go on the record, that the U.S. ambassador got involved, the U.S. embassy got involved, and all of this is occurring in the spring of 2016, while in Kiev, 800 kilometers to the northeast, they are taking, they've replaced the American ambassador, Pyatt, who had described Hunter's boss, Zlochevsky, as a guilty party for a year and a half. They replace him with Yovanovitch, and instantaneously, Zlochevsky, Hunter's boss at Burisma, is now purer than the driven snow. and the prosecutors who are going after him are crooked and all get fired. So we're in Kiev firing crooked prosecutors, and the same jokers are down in Bucharest, 800 kilometers away, trying to destroy the character of a fine, upstanding female prosecutor in Romania, again, for the benefit of another one of Hunter's corrupted partners.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me that the State Department's not deeply involved. You also have to remember John Kerry is Secretary of State while all of this is occurring, right?
And
He's
we've
the
also
guy who
seen
got the
his son
visas
is
for
on.
recent executives.
It was it his son, as well as a number of other U.S. Congressmen, women, and senators, family members are also on boards around Ukraine, involved in natural gas as well. I just want to bring this to light as you move this story forward, Jack.
Yes, it is. And I mean, if you go to Kazakhstan, if you go back 2 decades, when the Kazakhstanis realized that they had oil and gas assets that could be valuable to the development of their country, originally all those assets were going to be sold to the Chinese communists. You know, they came in like vultures, and U.S. Intel went to Western oil companies and State Department and probably Commerce and everybody else, and had a sit down with them and said, no, you guys are going to go in and buy those assets. So there's about $250 billion of Western investment inside Kazakhstan that was
It's a huge number.
handheld to the investment by U.S. Intel back in the early 2000s. So
Wow.
yes, we had deep interests in all these countries, and Kazakhstan and Ukraine provided a function for the West whereby they're very loosely operated countries and corruption is endemic. I mean, it's Masimov and another guy named Kemez Rakishev, who is a titan of uranium exploration and minerals and stuff like that in Kazakhstan. Those are the 2 guys who are in the photograph with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden at Cafe Milano, that dinner that never happened. And this is an interesting story because Glenn Kessler, who's the fact checker at the Washington Post, you know, Mr. For Pinocchio, not a bad guy, actually an honorable guy. I contacted Glenn. I said, Glenn, you're wrong on this one. Hunter did communicate with the people at that dinner for days prior, saying that his father was going to be there. And to Glenn Kessler's credit, 6 days later, on the 16th of June last year, I was sitting in Kay Graham's chair in the boardroom of the Washington Post with Peter Walston on my right-hand side, who's now, I think, the national investigative editor, and Tom Hamburger, who's the national investigative reporter. I went through every crime, every geography. I later sent them 2 more copies of the laptop. And finally, last October 21st, I sat there with another copy. Wow. And plugged it into Matt Visor, the White House reporter's computer. So they've had all this for a long time. So have all of the Republicans. I think people would be very upset to know that many people had this thing and really did nothing. And I mean, I even left War Room because Steve did not want to cover the laptop, or at least he did not want to cover the laptop between the election, so to speak, and himself getting in trouble and whatever else. And I quit and went rogue, went on my own. I mean, first outside group I gave it to was Swedish National Television, because Hunter had, and Rosemont Seneca, the broker dealer, is in an office inside Swedish House, which houses the Swedish ambassador's residence, the Swedish embassy, and the Icelandic embassy. And Hunter had a Chinese spy in there, 100%. And so it's been a long road, but I think that most of Western intelligence knows that our intelligence services are dirty. I'd throw MI6 in there big time. You know, and also proof of this is February, a year ago, I tried to release 8,000 emails to the world. I first put them up on 2 Dropboxes in UK, 2 in the US, 1 in New Zealand, all these ones they tell us they can trade child pornography on. And all those drop boxes were taken down in under 70 minutes. I think majority of them were under 10 minutes. So that means US intelligence was doing cache searches around the internet of something that didn't exist over a year ago.
Running AI
And
on the backend servers, Amazon web servers, you name it.
and ultimately I put it up on a thing called Swiss transfer, which allows you to transfer 50 gigabytes at a time. And this cache was downloaded probably several thousand times around the world before they shut me down on that too.
Wow.
But they've been playing a dirty and dangerous game, and they've been lying to the American people. And here's something else that everybody needs to be aware of. There are a lot of players inside the Republican Party who are not to be trusted under any circumstances. Two of the foremost of these two people are Mike Pompeo and Bill Barr. Okay, we did not find out till after Bill Barr left office that he'd been an analyst at CIA for 8 years after school. They sent him to law school, and he was outside counsel to the director for another 12 years, right? That was too secret for the American people or even the United States senators to know in his confirmation hearing. But he revealed that in February of last year. Now, remember, Mike Pompeo was made director of CIA when Trump took power, and Tillis was over at the State Department. Tillis decides to leave. They shift Pompeo to the State Department. Pompeo, remember, was going to clean up the State Department. As far as I know, he didn't do a damn thing. And Pompeo and Barr recommend to President Trump that Pompeo be replaced at CIA by a woman named Gina Haspel. Okay. Gina Haspel was the station chief in London in 2016 when they were running the Steele dossier, Cambridge professor, Misford, Papadoulis Page scam that was the crux of the whole attack against Trump for the first 3 years he was in office. Gina Haspel ran it. So are you telling me that Pompeo and Barr didn't know this when they recommended that she take over CIA? They knew it, and they betrayed the president, and they betrayed their trust to the American people. Bad dudes. And you see now they're the two people who are clamoring with the loudest voices for an independent counsel. This would be a grave error. These independent counsels are perfect for the intel and the FBI because they cover everything up, and it takes 5 years to get to a conclusion. We need to have open hearings, under oath. Bill Barr needs to be under oath. Mike Pompeo needs to be under oath. Gina Haspel needs to be under oath. And something else that everybody should understand, when Hunter goes to free in 2016, who the hell is the family going to go to in 2019 when he loses the laptop? They're going to go to Louis Freeh. When I showed the correspondence of Louis Freeh, I first sent it to the Daily Mail. They needed to know, they did a story about it. Then I sent it to Bernie Kerik, former police commissioner of New York. Kerik's first words are like, yo, bro, you know that prick Peter Strzok? He's best friends with Louis Freeh. I'm just putting this all together. I'm like, what?
Jeez.
And then he says, yeah, every time in the 90s I saw them together like frickin' frack, right? Next person I call up, confidential informant, he doesn't know Bernie Kerik. He says, Jack, you do know that Peter Strzok and Louis Freeh are very close friends. I said, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, back in the 90s, there were a number of these illegal spy catcher teams that were supposed to be capturing even evil Russians after the fall of the wall. Remember, Louis Freeh gets kicked out about a month before 9/11 because he'd done such a horrible job at FBI, particularly in the counterintelligence unit, where you had Hansen, the guy who Freeh went to church with every Sunday, who sold out all of our spies in Eastern Europe, right? So
really?
Freeh gets pulled.
Not aware
Whoever
of that story, but I'm not surprised.
Are survivors, but Peter Strzok survives.
Yeah.
My guess is that Louis Freeh called up Peter Strzok, said, you got to find this laptop. Peter Strzok went out to the field offices, said, you know, anybody who doesn't have the secret handshake doesn't touch this. This comes to the counterintelligence group. And that's why we now know it's in the Baltimore office, which is right by the airport next to NSA. It's not FBI. It's basically counterintelligence at the FBI is sleight of hand It's controlled by CIA. And it's so that they can, without violating the statutes, spy on American citizens and pretend they're not. And it's been going on for a long time. It needs to be taken down. And what's even more frightening, I was told that because those spy teams were so illegal, they had to provide plausible deniability for the director. And the guy who provided that plausible deniability was the go-between, the Chinese firewall executive officer, James Comey, right?
Really?
Now, we want to tie another dot together. Hunter's never going to get prosecuted for espionage because he never had a security clearance. He never had anything, right? We're not at war. But he could be put in jail for the rest of his life and multiple lives for the economic crimes that were committed inside the broker-dealer.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who is director of SEC enforcement put in that position on the 21st of January, 2021? None other than a woman named Melissa Hodgson, who just happens to be Peter Strzok's wife. So Peter Strzok's wife is the one who would have to refer to the Department of Justice the criminal activity inside Hunter's broker-dealer in order for him to get prosecuted.
This is literally, Jack, this is literally like multiple volumes of Tom Clancy novels, right? Playing out in front of you. And what you're aware of is my sister was CSIS, and she left because of a lot of, let's just say, very compelling and strong reasons, because when we both got into service and for our callings, you know, a little bit about my background, it was literally to go out there to protect fucking genocide from happening, to do whatever we could. And she went the intelligence angle, and she rose up to a mid-level, and they capped her, and then eventually left because of certain things she was exposed to around the world that she could not stomach. And so I just want to put this out here to folks, where I have a lot of personal experience on the Canadian side, and there's so many mirrors as well. I'm not going to be name dropping here. This is about Jack and what you're sharing, which is amazing, because really America is the first flag, regardless of any country you are in the world, regardless of what your political affiliation is. You're either on the side of light or dark, and America is the first flag where they have the ability, with the military, with the white hats, Q team, you name it, behind them, to literally take back their country and help save the world. 100%. That's exactly what it is today. And that's why it's also so important that we're talking about this with America, because I feel that the very core in Europe, we know, is around the Ukraine with the Khazars, as well as in America, the massive intelligence operations that have been run against us for a long time.
Well, and they create chaos around the world, and there's no consequence for when they make a mistake. And I mean, imagine what kind of world we'd live in instead of spending $8 trillion on the sands of Arabia over the last 20 years. We'd spend $8 trillion in Latin America building schools and hospitals and paving highways and, you know, providing them with infrastructure. First of all, it would change the entire character of our hemisphere forever. And all of those people can walk here. Yeah. And frankly, none of them, you know, go to their churches every day with the absolute intent of killing all of us. So it makes sense that we take care of our neighbors rather than throw our blood and treasure into, you know, enemy camps around the Middle East and expect that we're going to have some sort of different outcome. I mean, without being, you know, demographics are destiny, as they say, but the United States of America, for example, had about 1 million people who identified as Muslims in 2000, right? And we had 4.5 to 6 million people identified as Jews. That number has flipped now. And to what end? And we've watched the same thing happen in Europe. And you have to begin to wonder, are these people serving our interests, or they're serving their own? And I think I say this a lot, you know, everybody has to remember, whatever your faith is, even if it's just like a story, the Son of God was sold out for like $300 in today's money. Shows you how humble he was. And you don't think that we would get sold out for for hundreds of millions, billions of dollars happens every single day.
Yeah.
And even Hunter's little Bohai Harvest private equity firm, half of Wall Street's invested in that. Why wouldn't you be invested? If it's controlled by Chairman Xi and the Communist Party, you know it's never going to come up negative. So this is also contributing to systemic rot inside of our financial systems, and nobody's doing anything about it. And, you know, it should be clear to everybody that the Chinese aren't to be trusted. And also, let's go back to COVID. Literally, Hunter Biden and his partners raised millions of dollars for MetaBiota. MetaBiota was a privatized company that the US Intel used to run the biolabs in Ukraine, which I uncovered. Also deeply involved inside the Wuhan lab. You can find papers written by MetaBiota describing them as bat and corona experts. And Hunter had a secretary in Beijing named Xiao Yang. Her last name is Zeng, spelled Z-E-N-G. And her husband is a guy named Fu Gao or George Gao, senior top guy in the Chinese CDC. And Hunter hooks this guy up with MetaBiota, and they essentially run the gain of function experiments inside the Wuhan lab that gave us COVID. US Intel and disgusting characters like Tony Fauci et al. Are just as responsible for the COVID outbreak as the Chinese communists, because we offshored their Frankenstein experiments to China because they weren't under law allowed to engage in these experiments inside the United States. And they went completely rogue. And now millions of people around the world lost their lives. The economy of the world lost trillions and trillions of lost opportunities, family businesses destroyed. These people need to be held to account.
Mm-hmm. It's full-on crimes against humanity. And it's interesting, you know, I have a challenge understanding where they cross the line so many times, whether it is trafficking of everything from narcotics to children, people, through to creating these bioweapons and then unleashing it on the population using propaganda, mainstream media, and people are now taking these injections, and some think they're doing it for the greater good. Others are doing it under coercion. Others are just following the narrative, Jack. They know that these kill. They know that these alter. They know it's transhumanist. I had Lee Dundas on not long ago again, and no problem. Lee Dundas on here not long ago again. As you know, her and Tom Brenz brought the information to Senator Ron Johnson in January of this year on the DMED system. And they know about this. So to me, it's interesting where, and I'm kind of speaking as a voice of the viewers too in the audience, how is it that they can go, wow, we should not subvert this law, but over here, we're absolutely going to kill a whole bunch of people and take children from their homes and go traffic them under the guise of law, you know, with something that may or may not be named with a three-letter agency with the first word being child in front of it. This is my impression.
Well, you know, I think that there's an ugly aspect of child abuse that is the undercurrent of all of this, right? The very first thing that Rudy and Bernie Kerik did in a very responsible fashion.
Referring to Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that.
We knew that there were very clear allegations that Hunter was sexually abusing his 12-year-old niece, both in written and certainly enough images that would give someone pause.
And also you said that the president believes in the rule of law. Does he believe in the rule of law when it comes to the former president or even his son?
I'm not going to comment anymore on both of the topics that you just mentioned. The Department of Justice is independent with their criminal investigation. The president has been very clear on that, and I would refer you to Department of Justice on those two topics that you just brought up.
Does he believe in the rule of law when it comes to the former president or even his son?
And the very first group that they took this thing to was the Delaware State Police Child Protective Unit, which was actually created by Beau Biden. I love how they had created all these cover environments when they're engaged in the very same thing that they're supposedly protecting children from. And they gave it to Delaware State Police, and under the statute, even if it's anonymous, they have to go do a welfare check on this child. They never did a welfare check. In fact, the Delaware State Police handed the copy over to the FBI. When I went to Switzerland in March to try and catalog what I thought were only 128,000 emails and et cetera, and we uncovered the whole erased side, which includes things like mirror images of all the Biden family cell phones, including likely President Biden's cell phone as well. Hunter put spyware on all of his family members' phones. He would basically take them and turn them into developer app phones, which would eliminate the security aspects and then hand them back to his family members after polluting them with his own spyware. It's all there. We found that Hunter had multiple root certificates that seemed to allow him to have administrative function to create email addresses inside the DoD computer system. First person I went to was the US Embassy. They did nothing. Second person I got on the line was General Flynn. He did nothing. And then I find out General Flynn's out bad-mouthing me, calling me a bad actor, a liar. He's the one who was apparently funding that kid, Garrett Ziegler, who did Marco Polo, which has been a complete whitewash. I mean, ask yourself, how did Miranda Devine get $4.5 million to write a book? And it was Jack Maxey with his IRA account who actually went and did a forensic survey of the laptop. Why? Why has this all been turned into the troubled drug addict Hunter instead of the utterly corrupted FBI and CIA that through their uncontrolled program with no oversight are putting all of humanity at risk? Yes. From the Wuhan lab to Afghanistan, and they never pay a price. I mean, you want to see something about the disgusting nature of the FBI? How is it that the FBI knew that doctor at Michigan was abusing those little girls for 5.5 years and did nothing? We had hearings about it last August. You had Grassley, the FBI's got to do better. Did anybody go to jail? Did anybody lose their pension? Even this guy Thibault or Thibodeau or whatever his name is that they're trying to blame the whole Hunter laptop on, he was allowed to resign with his full pension. Tell me why. Why isn't he in jail? Why is it that the guy Kleinsmith, who falsified the warrant applications in the FISA court for Page and Papandoulos, he falsifies these warrants and his penalty is 30 hours of continuing ethics education and a year of probation? Are you kidding me? These people need to be thrown in federal prison where they get the consequences of being FBI agents in federal prison. Yeah. And we're talking about hundreds of them. And this pretense, I'm now glad to see that some people are coming forward, but it's not nearly enough, right? If a couple dozen have come forward, we need to have hundreds come forward. Yes. Because it's over. The FBI, I believe, is going to be turned into the fall guy here because CIA does not want the heat on themselves, but they're going to see the heat too. Because Pompeo's thinking about running for president, and let me tell you what, I'm going to harass that guy every step of the way till he answers how Gina Haspel replaced him. But he won't. He'll back out. He'll probably get some job now. Yeah. Well, I've decided not to run for president. I guess I'm going to get $5 million a year selling facial recognition programs or something from McDonnell Douglas. Mm-hmm. It's disgusting merry-go-round of greed and grifts, and it's got to end. We've got to bring manufacturing back to the United States. We've got to stop relying on the communist Chinese, and we've got to stop relying in this deeply embedded belief system of ours that the CIA and the FBI are actually watching our six. They're not. They're watching their own six. They're involved in so much shady crap that the raison d'etre of these organizations to a large extent now has become protecting themselves from being exposed.
Right. Right. I'm absolutely with you on that. I could easily go on for 8-10 more hours from what I've learned, and you've got incredible intel. We're almost at
Sorry about that.
an hour, my friend. You have nothing to apologize for. Really, you're one of the unsung heroes for humanity, and it's incredible to have people. If everybody could at least very well just do 5% of what you've done, stand up, speak out, and continue to speak out. And that's it. And just take one topic, pick one lane and do so. This is going to topple far faster. And that's one of the points of us and the people on our program having.
I feel fortunate that this landed in my lap, because it landed in a lot of other people's laps and they did nothing. So I couldn't sit back and watch this all go on, know what I know, have people come forward, tell me things that really just would freak you out.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't play that they didn't know, because people like Marco Rubio's staff were briefed on this several years ago. There were prominent station chiefs who were briefed on all this. This has been in the loop of knowledge for a long time. And basically bad actors inside CIA and FBI have utterly betrayed the American people. They have caused more chaos, death, and destruction than anyone could possibly imagine. And back to those little girls.
Mm-hmm.
What did the FBI do to protect Hunter's niece? Nothing.
Like the US gymnastics team girls.
I mean, just last July, you can find this. It wasn't on the top line of the top fold of the New York Times, but the FBI agent tasked with child trafficking and pornography in the Southeast was arrested by a sheriff in Louisiana last July for exactly that. So it's a dirty, broken system that literally needs to be scraped from the earth with, D4 dozer and driven over until the foundations are rubble.
Yeah.
It is broken. And I would say the same is true with the FBI. And I mean, for General Flynn, he was head of DIA. What did he know about those biolabs, and when did he know it? I'm just sick and tired of these pretenders to truth, because all of them are dangerous. A liar is utterly a dangerous person in all respects, and particularly dangerous when we're dealing with topics of such weight. They will do anything to keep themselves from being exposed. And we watched it. They undermined an election, a presidential election, to keep themselves out of chains. What else will they do to keep themselves out of chains? The sky's the limit.
Right.
And the American people have to stand up and stop it. And so do the people of the West. I mean, when I was in Switzerland, I had a prominent Swiss attorney who was offering to help me. And then he declined. And I have no problem with the guy. I mean, he's a good man. And I said, why? He said, well, because what you're engaged in is getting too dangerous. I said, well, you knew what I was engaged in before. What's changed? He said, well, what's changed is the US government is now threatening the Swiss government to go after every single one of their banks unless they give up their neutrality over Ukraine. Well, guess what? While I was in Switzerland, a neutral country, the place that we go exchange our spies, gave up their neutrality over Ukraine. And you watch the same thing happen with Sweden. I was actually contacted by a Swedish reporter saying, well, what do you think? I said, I think it's a disaster. I think Ukraine is a disaster. I think you idiots getting involved is going to harm your economy. And it's done all these things. And now you saw Finland do the same thing. The heck did Ukraine become the most important place on planet Earth? It has like zero strategic interest for us other than they just continue to produce grain. Other than that, they mean nothing, right? They don't. And, it's been a giant money laundering operation. I mean, how is it possible that for 22 years, the country that gave more money to the Clinton Foundation than any other country on planet Earth was Ukraine? Is it because, like, you know, Silicon Valley and Kiev is just kicking ass, and there's so many, like, you know, hotshot rich people in Ukraine because of their, like, liberalized economy, competing with, Seattle and San Francisco? No, because we send them $5 billion from the U.S. taxpayer, and they send $2 billion back for the corrupt people who got the money to them in the first place. So I don't know. It's going to have to stop. I think it's going to stop. I think people should be somewhat confident in that. I handed this over to a number of sheriffs.
Awesome.
All of it, including the scrape
Awesome.
materials, been sitting for over a month in
Yeah.
one of the top crime labs in the country. First intent is going to be to protect any of the women who are trafficked or young girls who are abused. And then the second intent is going to be to go after all these banks that Hunter used to commit these crimes, and to all these drug dealers and human traffickers that he was in correspondence and doing business with, and go after them on the state level. We don't need the FBI and the SEC to prosecute money launderers. A state DA can do that. A county DA and a sheriff can do that. And that's what we're going to do. And when we start throwing Betty Sue from the Wells Fargo Bank in Fayetteville, Arkansas, that Hunter used to launder tens of millions of dollars, the Pruitt, Mr. Pruitt, please come at me anytime you want, your little private client group, because we're going to put you in jail on the state level. And it's not going to be club fed. It's going to be an Arkansas state prison. And we're going to do this around the country. Amen. Because the American people deserve justice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for generations of justice. And my grandfather,
100%.
on my mother's side, is one of those who flew over occupied Europe and did 5.5 years in the air war. And both my parents are first-gen Canadians because their parents fled France, and they fled Ukraine and Poland. That's my heritage. When they got to the shores of Canada, almost half of them soldiered up and went back and fought World War I and World War II, Jack. So this goes generations, and it goes beyond that. I appreciate you. Do you feel, as one of the closing questions here, My Son Hunter, the film, will also help wake people up? And have you had a chance to preview it as well?
I've not had a chance, but when they were first raising money, I was put together with them, and it seemed to me that it was going to be a big comedy and kind of like the bumbling idiot. And so at the time I said, look, that's not what this is about. This is utterly evil, depraved stuff. This is not a comedy. This is some of the darkest information I've ever been exposed to in my life.
It's demonic.
And sadly, my guess is that it's going to be a cock up. I don't know that they had enough information to do it properly.
Gotcha.
And, again, how shocking is it that Miranda Devine is throwing exclusives up almost weekly in the New York Post when I thought she wrote the definitive book. How can there be more for you to discover, Miranda? Right? I think all of this was done to whitewash everything and have it go away. And it's not going to go away. And
we're not gonna let it.
I know that there are a lot of people who think, well, why don't we just get rid of Maxey? No, that would be a grave error, because there are hundreds of copies distributed around the world now.
Yeah.
And with groups who are patriotic, who
Excellent.
are on their own now. They're observing what happens, and I do not control what they do. They've played the game for a year now. But at any point, they can release this stuff to whoever they want. But my plea is that we allow the institutions the opportunity to heal themselves, that we take the Constitution, and if we have to fashion it into a whip to run these people out of our temple, we'll do it. But I think that has to be the first action plan, is to see that the institutions can fix themselves first. Now, however painful that may be, but they need to do it. And We're living in this world of smoke and mirrors where nothing is real. I mean, off topic, but a perfect example was 6 months ago, if you said anything about a male transvestite athlete competing against women, you were destroyed.
Yeah.
Then a 6'4" male trans female athlete sweeps the NCAA swimming finals, and now everybody's coming around that maybe this isn't a good idea. But when is that reality going to hit home with like ground combat in the Marines, or like Army Ranger School, or various other things that are just as equally glaring and have even more dire consequences? I mean, it's almost as if the whole society has been developed now to provide self-esteem for broken people rather than fixing a broken country. And it's problematic on a lot of levels.
It most certainly is. Jack Maxey, where can people find you and the best way to get in touch with you and follow your amazing journey and heroic journey?
Well, I've been banned from most places, but I'm still on Getter.
Getter and Truth Social.
GETTR.
All right.
Jack_Maxey.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of dropped Gab. I got tired of just dealing with all the racist crap. I mean, it's like, there's some fine people over there, and then there's an army of 13-year-olds, behind anonymous names. And so I sort of I couldn't be bothered anymore getting angry over, inane comments by children every day.
Yep.
But so I'm on Getter, and I will do interviews like this as much as I can.
Awesome. Thank you. And your link will be published here in the edit the entire time we've been speaking. That'll be also in the description. This will be on podcasts everywhere, and then our 3 broadcast platforms. YouTube, we'll see how long that one lasts, because we've got our first strike and our.
They're being a little more cautious these days. They haven't been tearing stuff down because it's all turned out to be true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's probably a tort against Twitter and YouTube by thousands of people who were accused of, fake news when it's not fake.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, when Twitter canceled me, they sent me a suicide note. We've heard that you're thinking about committing suicide. The Twitter family loves you and cares about you. And I only went to look because my Twitter no longer worked. And 2 hours after that one, they sent me you're banned for life. It's people play for keeps, and we have to play for keeps.
Absolutely.
As Archbishop Vigano said a few weeks ago, they're children of light and they're children of darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And the children of light have to become confident in the knowledge that we outnumber them and start acting like it.
Yes.
Right?
Most indeed. It is a spiritual war. You're either on the side of light or dark. That's it. It's not a party.
Yeah.
Not the color of your skin. It's not whatever religion or retail level spirituality. It's literally light, dark, angels and demons, 100%. And it's in front of everybody's face now. The cover's dropped. You see the wizard behind the screen. And for those of you who are too young, this is a Wizard of Oz reference. All right.
Yeah.
Their levers are being pulled behind the screens. Jack has spent roughly an hour sharing with you some of those families, as well as some of those entities with 3-letter names and the people who are implicated in this. Jack, thank you so much. I have one last question every guest gets, and that question is the genie in the bottle. If there was one thing you could do for the world right now and you had God's power within it, what would that be?
If I had God's power right now, I think I would just reveal all the truth. I would bear all of the sins of the West so that the people of the West could understand what has been done in their names now for 40, 50 years. And people would be shocked. And I think we'd start moving back towards the moralistic nation states that we became over a 200-year period and somehow lost our way. I think that's what I would try to do. I'd also would be very intent upon, I would reduce the size of the federal government by a minimum of 50%. And I would start devoting our foreign aid to people who share our goals in life and share our kind of theological basis for what is the purpose of life. I would utterly abandon the Middle East outside of Israel and maybe Jordan and Egypt and tell the rest, good luck. Let the Chinese control it. Europe's done, right? I mean, it's over, right? There's nothing left to save. And this winter will prove that for everyone. And I don't think that young men and young women should go and die for Europe again, right? Every 50 years, there's some conflict over there that we got to come save them from. I'm done. I don't need it. What do they make over there anymore? Fancy cars and, some machine tooling that makes up the basis of the German economy, and they sell that to China. How long do you think that industry is going to last? Not long. I'm tired of American taxpayers subsidizing European socialism. Fact. And then being beaten by the fact that, like, oh, we don't have free this and free that. But we can't afford it because we're carrying everything else on that continent.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
Amen.
Listen,
Good.
Stay in the fight, people. The West has been through worse. And I'm a big believer that the American people, the Canadian people, the British people, armed with the truth, can overcome any problem. But we have to start speaking about these things truthfully. And that's the first step.
Amen to that. I appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, please go together, follow, or create an account and then follow Jack Maxey. His link's all here. And stay in the vibration of love. And remember, leverage some levity. You've got to step back from this and have God's laughter, Christ's laughter within you, and protect yourselves with the blood of Christ from any demons who may be lurking. Whether you are a believer of the Bible, at the end of the day, it's light. Call in the angels, call in the good galactics, and stay virtuous and hold the line. Jack Maxey, a pleasure and honor. Yes, exactly. Ooh-yah for the Navy, ooh-yah for the Marines, and oorah for the Army. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Somewhat, we start a bar fight over that, but we'll let it go.
All right. Well,
anyway,
we're doing our
God
best,
bless.
Canadian. God bless.
Seriously, people, we win, they lose. If we don't win today, we win tomorrow. If we don't win tomorrow, we win the next day. We keep fighting until we win back our country.
Yep.
And the world depends on it. If the United States is broken, the whole world has no chance.
Correct. That's my point in the beginning. It's America. That's the flag we need to plant, and helping America as well as our own and anywhere else in the world. But understand that is the line in the sand that's drawn, is America must be made great again. And hey, I'm ultra mega, as well as I may not hold the passport, folks. I'm fucking ultra mega and loving in God. Thank you all, everybody. We're going to sign this off now, and hopefully Jack will come back in the next few months ahead and update us with everything too. Thank you, Jack.
Sounds good. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us on the program, ladies and gentlemen. Please like, follow, subscribe, share this with 9 friends and family. And of course, if you enjoy our blinged Buddha firing red pills from his 9mm, let us know. Everybody, I want to tell you about the all-natural quantum wellness products that it helps reverse the nasty effects of those toxic arm thingies. You get it, right, Somers? This is roots. So here's the thing. It also dramatically heals your gut. It skyrockets creativity and it boosts mental focus. I've been using it for 8 months. An incredible amount of insight has come into it. When you go to therootbrands.com/soul, use the code SOUL, and you'll get $15 off applied to shipping of your next order. It also increases your biosphere. As a Reiki master, I can tell you that the vibrational uplift of these products is second to none. So here's the thing, they also have zero-in product. This is what rapidly boosts consciousness with intention and decalcifies the pineal gland. What's so good about that? It also gives you incredible amounts of focus without caffeine. This is all natural. When you go to therootbrands.com/soul, use the code SOUL, you also get a new code for you, and you can set up your own distributor business. In fact, around the world, there are laid off benevolent healers, healthcare heroes, parents, and now Tier 1 special operators no longer being deployed who have worked their careers to be benevolent and serve the greater good of humanity. Well, some of those people are making big chunks of money every single month by sharing these all-natural products with people, and we're seeing amazing reviews. I mean, even with the Gimme Back My Youth product, which is all natural, there's women claiming their wrinkles have disappeared in just 5 to 7 days, and they look 25 years younger. This is all natural. All of that and more when you visit rootbrands.com/soul. Use the code SOUL, and you get $15 off applied to the shipping of your second order. By the way, when you add Roots Prime shipping, it often ships within just 2 business days to over 50 countries on the planet. And this makes it easy. You set it once, it sends to you every single month. Of course, you can cancel at any time, but when you see and feel the amazing effects of the world's first quantum consciousness, nootropic, and natural detoxifier, then why would you want to? In fact, I just had 3 separate guests on my show, from a psychic to a director, from the UK and Ireland, all the way across North America to a best-selling author. All 3 of these amazing humans are using Roots, and they cannot say enough about its incredible virtues and how it's affected them and made positive impressions on their life and in their biosphere and their ethereal light bodies. So this includes removing the deadly graphene oxide and the heavy metals. Clean Slate is one of those from the system. You know what I mean here. You know, if you know, you know, right? Health is wealth, right? And doctors agree shedding is a thing. We've seen that from Dr. Martin, Dr. Thorpe, Dr. Christian Northrup, Dr. Jane Ruby, Dr. Ariana Love. There are so many medical studies now showing that the shedding from people who have got it, even onto the people that are purebloods, those purebloods are being affected. So the Roots products, the Trinity Plus pack, is one of the most amazing all-natural products that not only protects your body, but anything you've come into contact with, it'll shed and remove it from you with grace and ease. As a major reinsurance CEO in the United States recently declared in his Nuremberg deposition, his company has seen a 5,000% increase in mortality of their policyholders in the past year. So to help combat shedding, you order the Trinity Pack Plus. It comes with the Clean Slate, all right, which is drops that you just put under your mouth, a few a day. You'll find the protocol there, as well as one of these 0-in tablets that give you incredible clarity, creativity, and tap into higher levels of consciousness, which your soul is craving for. And this also helps protect your loved ones naturally, so you detoxify your body while amplifying your day with incredible energy and laser-like focus. Who doesn't want that, right? That's exactly what we have right now. So join tens of thousands of people around the globe now enjoying their best life because of these incredible American-made all-natural health products, which heal the body and massively boost the consciousness of each soul. You go to therootbrands.com/soul. Add Roots Prime to it. Use the code SOUL at checkout, and you'll get $15 off applied to the shipping of your second order. And they'll send you a link that you can use, if you choose, to have your own distribution business to generate massive amounts, potentially, of monthly recurring income.